Inflation is when you pay $15 for the $10 haircut you used to get for $5 when you had hair. Sam Ewing. Anyone who thinks economics is boring has never heard heated panel debates on inflation all over primetime news. The truth is, economics has always been an integral part of our lives long before these TV debates came about. A little over 2 centuries ago, in 1795, England witnessed extreme food scarcity and consequent food riots. Women seized the available food and redistributed it among the common folk. Among them was Sarah Rogers, who was sentenced to 3 months in prison for redistributing butter at a fair price. These protests eventually came to be known as the Revolt of the Housewives. Today, it probably have been made into a popular reality TV show, but at that point, the protests are said to have provoked sharp reactions from the government. From inappropriately harsh sentences toward the so-called rioters at one end of the spectrum, to the provision of new systems like the Spieneland Act, which provided economic relief for the poor on the other end. The revolt proved impactful in changing the economic outlook of even England's poorest individuals, but had ulterior motives for the elites who were using food scarcity as a way to increase personal profits. What lay at the heart of the revolt and the panic among officials was, in fact, the fear of rampant inflation, caused not only by the food shortage, but by the remaining food being sold at a higher cost to wealthier individuals, leaving the poor with barely enough to survive on. It may be more than 2 centuries later, but we still feel the impact of inflation as it occurs during our own time, whether with food shortages or economic crises. Despite inflation being such a touchy issue, have we really put in any effort to understand this topic? And by understand, I don't mean half-baked theories by self-proclaimed economic experts dishing out what can only be called their misinformed opinions on TV. By understand, I mean really get to the bottom of it, to understand the very levers that drive inflation as a whole, and also what it is that makes us so scared of it. All about perception. Perhaps no other word in the English language strikes more fear in consumers than inflation. If that is true, it likely could be said that a majority of those same people do not adequately understand the economic principle behind inflation. U.S. Inflation Calculator. The way we perceive inflation reminds me of the story of the farmer who was almost scared to death because he thought there was a snake at the entrance of the barn. He waited hours, rooted to the same spot on top of a box, as it was dark and he couldn't risk stepping on the snake. As the morning light began streaming in, however, he realized that it was only a rope, and his mind had done a number on him. After a night of fear and exhaustion, he was finally free to go home. But why wouldn't he just try to come out despite the snake? Or why wouldn't he take a stick or something to protect himself while he left? If this seems silly, remember that we are no different from the farmer, and that rope isn't different from inflation itself. The answer to those why questions is that fear paralyzes you. Your logical reasoning is tossed right out of the window, and you're left there seeing the world with your emotion rather than your senses. We're constantly fed misinterpretations about inflation, and we've been gullible enough to take those in simply because it's convenient. Who has the time to find out the truth for themselves, after all? Isn't that the job of the media? Well, the job of the media is to keep you hooked so that they can get sponsorships for their own channels. And most often the truth isn't as sensational as fiction, so on goes the circus. What if I was to tell you that inflation isn't all bad? In fact, inflation drives the economy as it keeps customers spending and businesses profitable.